Mount Everest is majestic, alluring, and today dangerously overcrowded. In the last few decades, the Earth's highest peak has become the pinnacle for, with backpack and crampons, tourists. If you're rich enough and reckless enough, you can join the queue to get that ultimate Instagram shot on the rooftop of the world. Many of these adventurers are unskilled and underprepared, and they're making the ascent more dangerous for other climbers. Gillian Lee wanted to conquer Mount Everest, and he was determined to do it on his own terms, without supplemental oxygen. That was a decision that nearly cost him his life. Gil grew up dreaming of climbing Mount Everest. He was a public servant who lived and worked in Canberra. But he led a double life, that of a fanatic mountaineer. This was his fourth attempt on Everest, and he was up for the challenge. He didn't go up the mountain alone. Two Sherpas, Kalden and Tensing, were by his side, but right from the start, they were worried.
I told Gil I think without oxygen, it'll be very difficult,
Kalden told.
If for a Sherpa it's difficult without oxygen, for clients it's more difficult.
There's an area towards the top of Mount Everest they call the death zone. Because of the altitude, the body begins dying. The brain and the lungs are starved for air. Your heart rate explodes, and every breath feels as though it's through a straw. The more time you spend at the death zone and above, the more punished you get. At the end, it will just tick over and your brain will switch off. That's what happened to many climbers. Gil chose to make his attempt on the difficult north slope of Everest on the Tibetan side of the mountain, and there's good reason for that. The south face, on the Nepalese side, has become hopelessly overcrowded, with up to 200 climbers at a time queued up on the path to the summit. On the north side of the mountain, Gil begins his ascent. It's perfect climbing weather, and there aren't any queues. But at 7,600 meters, and with the summit just over a kilometer away, Gil struggles to breathe.
His cough was bad,
recalls Kalden.
He told me, okay, I'm fine, but his coughing intensified. Also, his color was blue, not pink. And I thought he's not so good.
Gil knew he was struggling, but was determined to reach the top. He was sick. He had massive chest infection trying to reach the summit. He really pushed the limits. But it's a bit like summit fever. How do you say no? How do you cancel your dream? The two Sherpas tell Gil they should turn back, but he won't listen. Then his body just switched off because of lack of oxygen. Apparently, he passed out for 3 hours, and his Sherpas dragged him back to the camp below. Gil's life is now in the hands of his two Sherpa guides, Kalden and Tensing. They said he was at the limit. They threw him into a sleeping bag, got all the hot water bottles they could, and they just tried to keep his body warm. There's now no choice. The two Sherpas must bring Gil down the mountain, a technically demanding rescue rarely attempted at this altitude. Many hours into the descent, the Sherpas are desperate and struggling. Then, in an extraordinary stroke of luck, they stumble on a Chinese team. They tie Gil onto a sleeping mat, turning it into a makeshift sled. The next few hours become an epic ordeal of endurance as the rescuers slide Gil down the mountain. Eventually, they reach base camp at 6,400 meters, where the team leader Arnold Koester is waiting. Gil is semi-conscious and his lungs are filling with blood. The statistics don't lie about people climbing without oxygen. About 30%, if they stay off oxygen, don't survive.
He was coughing a mixture of infection and blood, constantly coughing up slime,
recalls Arnold.
This is extremely dangerous.
They have to get Gil to a hospital and fast. Now that they've run out of snow and ice to slide along, it once again becomes a near impossible task to lift Gil over this rocky terrain. That's when they strapped Gil to the back of a yak. It takes the yak around 6 hours to travel 22 kilometers down the mountain. They finally make it to the Tibetan border and cross into Nepal. From there, it's still a 20-minute helicopter ride to Kathmandu. Sitting in a wheelchair in a Kathmandu hospital, Gil started to comprehend just how close he came to dying on the mountain, and what role he played in the drama. Gil's mother rushed to Kathmandu to help care for her son. But will a mother's love be enough to stop Gil from risking everything again?
No,
admits Gil.
Life is not about saying, okay, I've hit a stumbling block. I'm just going to turn my back around, tail between my legs, and run home somewhere safe. It's about what you do with your time that really matters.
Deep down, his mom knows nothing will stop him. When he slowly recovers, and as soon as he thinks he has the strength, he will be ticking over in his mind again. How am I going to get back to Everest? Until this boy summits Everest, or until Everest claims him, he will go back.